Jim, I am having the day of days because my hands are finally on these babies. I finally got these babies. You were rubbing my face in it for weeks.
Yeah, well, congratulations. I'm glad you finally got them. I'm really sorry that they're not in America yet. They're still on a boat as of mid-March, but they're coming. So they'll get here soon. So I'm glad you finally got them. I know you just went ahead and paid the postage to get them over from the UK, but you know what? They got here fast, right? And that's the challenge. Fun. Yeah, that's the challenge we're at, man. It's like, well, you can pre-order them and wait, or you can pre-order them from the UK and get them faster. But it's that postage cost. It's a cost benefit. You know, it's what's the old saying, Michael? It's you can pick two. It's fast, cheap, and good, or something like that. Yeah, something like that. So
it's fast and cheap, or it takes a long time and it's good, something like that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you got them. So congratulations on all the hard work you did on them. Hope you enjoy them.
It's been immensely fun, and I think it just makes it more real when it's in hard copy. Again, I'll go back. The PDFs are great, but there's something about a hard copy book that you can put next to your nightstand or decorate a coffee table. I mean, these are coffee table worthy too. We've been talking about the quality of these books for a while, so I'm happy to have them. And again, I just want to welcome everybody to today's Communicaga. I talk real good. Sorry, my universal translator just busted.
You're just so excited about those books.
I really am. It really made me day. Michael Dismuke, I'm a freelance writer for Modifius, and of course, a blogger on Continuing Missions, which is the #1 fan site for Star Trek Adventures RPG. Jim Johnson, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. Jim Johnson, project manager and lead editor for Star Trek Adventures, Modifius Entertainment. Anything that you see in the books is my fault. So enjoy.
All right. Well, there's so much excitement. We know we've been talking about the Shackleton Expanse book. It's been out for the Shackleton Expanse Campaign Guide, which has been out for about a year now. It came out last year. And just like we did with the Game Master's Guide and the Player's Guide, we want to break down chapter by chapter the Shackleton Expanse to really get the insights of what was Jim and all these writers thinking when they put the book together. I know that for one, my group, we're playing through the missions, and we are having a ball. Jim, I don't know if you caught it the other day. I sent you a link of our last play report of your mission, one of the missions you wrote.
I saw the link that you sent me. I have not had a chance to look at it yet. I'm heads down on a couple of Star Trek projects right now, and I just haven't been able to come up for air yet.
Those first. Don't just go to those first. I've said it before. That's what matters. Well, today we're actually going to be continuing our conversation from last week. Today we're talking about player options. Last week we actually went over and talked about the new species that were thrown into the book. The Akeru, the Kofuari. Ooh, I mispronounced. I butchered that really bad. The Vinshari and the Kalmirins. And today we're going to go into chapter 4, talking about player options. What does that mean when we say that, Jim? Player options.
Player options. That means all the new stuff that players can play with. It's the character species that we introduced in the book. It's a couple extra bits and bobs. It's just the more things for your players to do, more character options for you to play with. So and some new technology and gear as well that you can add to your characters and your games as needed.
Well, we're going to review them. I know I have my favorites behind me, which is one of my also favorite piece of art from the book. My second favorite piece of art is right here, the amazingly brilliant Kofuari, and one day I will learn how to pronounce it exactly correctly. Fortunately, we do have pronunciation tables on all of these. But I thought what we do is go page by page through. I'm going to go ahead and share screen, but for those of you who are listening on the audio cast, you'll just have to wait to get your PDF or your hard copy book to see some of the amazing art that we're about to see. Jim, of course, we're going to start with one that's close to your heart. Maybe you can tell us why as I go ahead and share the Akeru, which is one of the first player species in this chapter.
Yep, the Akeru, they're another a Vulcan/Romulan offshoot species that I wanted to throw in here because the Shackleton Expanse isn't necessarily all that far away from Romulan space. So dropped in some plot hooks and some ideas for them, but then also gave them the full-blown layout here. I was inspired by ancient Egypt culture and mythology with this, just plus some personal stuff and a few bits and bobs of other things. Thought it'd be a cool, interesting species to introduce. They are a young species in terms of warp capability, and they are creative, they are energetic, they are very efficient, and I thought they would be an interesting potential ally or adversary for player characters as they get into the Expanse and start exploring. So really curious to see what people decide to do with them. There's also some secrets built into their society that possibly might relate to the meta plot that we built into the campaign.
See, I'm afraid to talk about what we did with it in our campaign because one, I don't like spoilers. I'm big against spoilers, but I also don't want to give an idea that makes another game master kick themselves in the butt and be like, "Darn it, I should have done that." What's your feeling about doing that?
It's hard to say. Like, I don't know. I think we want to be careful about giving any spoilers away, but I think we made this such a toolkit that I think that every group is going to kind of put their own spin on it and have a lot of fun with it, hopefully.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll admit, when I first saw Romulan and Vulcan, I was kind of like, oh, that's kind of boring. I'm like, why would we do that? We've seen them so much everywhere else. But then when I finally read through their history and then also saw how it matches with the Tilikaal campaign, I was like, this was actually really brilliant. And again, no spoilers. Everyone knows that they can read our post-play reports on continuing missions if they're curious as to what our group did with it. I personally think it's better to play through the mission yourself first, just so that you aren't affected by what somebody else did, because every game is its own universe, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Well, let's go on to the next species, which totally fascinated me. This is the Kalmirin. Again, how did they come to be? And tell us what makes them special.
Yeah, the Kalmirins are a creation of Kelly Fitzpatrick. She came up with this. I gave each of the writers an opportunity to create a whole new species, and Kelly, Scott, and Derek, Tyler, Attico, they all delivered on that. And Kelly sent me this draft along with some pictures that she found, and I was like, okay, this is great, because this is something that you've never seen on a Star Trek show before, except maybe tangentially Prodigy. But of course, Prodigy didn't come out until well after we had done the layout and design of this book. So this was something fresh and different. And I just think it's really cool that these crystalline entities have the ability to warp time to some extent. I think that's a really cool science fiction concept that I'd love to see somebody do stuff with that in their games and talk about it.
Oh boy, will you! Oh boy, will you!
Cool. I'm looking forward to it. So I really appreciated this one because it really touches on that high concept science fiction stuff that Trek is really good at.
Yeah, I think, again, one of the things that we talk about a lot is that in a game, you have no budget. So you can have characters like this. You can have the most outlandish, creative characters like the Kalmirin introduced into your game because there's no budget constraints. So have fun with it. I can't wait to see a Kalmirin serving on my ship one day. I think that would be really cool. So great Kelly Fitzpatrick, great character design on this one. Let's go over, we have Orions, which we're familiar with. Anything special about the Orions you want to say as to why you dedicated an entire character option for them here?
Well, I mean, I had always intended on putting the Orions in the game somewhere, and this just seemed like the good fit, right? And it harkens back to way back at the beginning when I was just a freelance writer on the core rule book. I wrote a couple sidebars about being already in the Expanse, right? They're the only alpha beta quadrant species already in the Expanse, right? The Federation is not there yet. The Klingons, the Romulans, they're not actually in the Expanse yet. And so it was kind of this surprise to the Federation that, oh, hey, look, we're checking out the Expanse for the first time. And oh, by the way, the Orions are already here, entrenched, doing their thing. And, the side benefit was, Lower Decks came out and Tendi was a main character and she's an Orion. It's like, oh, well, this is just jiving nicely because now I can drop the Orions right into this book. It makes sense. It gives players a new species to play with, a familiar species to play with, right? I mean, harkening back all the way to the original series. And it just felt like a good time to drop them in. It also didn't hurt that, and I know even though it's the 32nd century, it's not quite relevant, but the Emerald Chain played a big role in season 3 of Discovery. And what I really liked about that is that they presented the Orions a little differently than what we've been used to seeing them as kind of like the slave trade and the slave owners and the the super voluptuous women in the very, skimpy outfits. I wanted to take a little bit of a different route here, and that's why I presented this character in a much more elegant outfit, just to show that the Orions are a lot more than what we've seen so far. And again, just want to get that option out there for players that they wanted to do something different. This is a place to do it.
Hey, I actually think Discovery has the best treatment of Orions yet, in my opinion. I just thought it was nice to see them coming out not as the part of alien trash of the galaxy, kind of, not really constructed, but really, really put together well. And I feel that the Shackleton Expanse could really be the origins of that, of revealing how powerful the Orions really are in Milky Way galaxy. So I really like that this was added in there. Cool. Mm-hmm. Okay, then we got the ones that I love the most. I think it's just because they're so cute and cuddly. Talk to us about the Kofuari.
I think they're deceptively cute and cuddly, right? So Scott Pearson, my good friend, and also the canon editor for Star Trek Adventures. He's also the primary copy editor for Simon & Schuster's line of Star Trek novels. He's been, I tasked him with creating giving him an opportunity to create a new species, and he came up with the Kofuari. And when he sent this draft along with his pictures, sketch concepts, I was just blown away. Because it's so different than what we've seen on Star Trek, right? But we've never seen any type of, not that I can remember, any type of like centaur character, like half humanoid, half animal kind of thing on screen. I'm sure they've been in the comic books. I'm willing to bet the animated series had something similar with the Aurelians, right?
But this was species 8472. They had mini legs.
Okay, there you go. Yeah. So I thought this was just really cool and different, and I loved it. And what I really love about the Kofuari, right, is their whole shtick, right? Their whole backstory. Like, they are so brilliant minds that they can just I kind of had this vision of like they're lounging on the veranda with cocktails and snacks, talking all this high level theoretical physics stuff. They're like, oh, we could create this temporal time stream drive, and wouldn't that be cool? And it could do this and this and this. And but we're not going to do it. We're not going to make it. We're just thinking about all these crazy, incredible things. It's like Stephen Hawking, if Stephen Hawking didn't bother to actually create anything. He was just coming up with all these incredible, super technical details, and they just don't choose. They just, culturally, they just choose not to make it, right? Which was just fascinating to me.
Well, where I really got prime directive on this one was, they're only a warp species conceptually. They haven't actually gone into warp according to this design. But imagine how many other species would purely want to enslave them to just get their mind, for the use of their mind. So the potential of people trying to take advantage of them, or if you could convince them, hey, okay, yeah, we know you have these great concepts. Don't you want to join Starfleet? I feel Starfleet almost begging them to join, which we haven't seen a lot of in Starfleet, where they see the value of one particular species over another when it comes to advancing their technology. And so I'm drooling with being able to use this species in our game, which we plan to do in a couple episodes.
Yeah. So. The only other thing I'll add about the Kofuari, and this is just because I spent so much time working on this book and the layout and development and stuff, that I was running plot ideas through my head, as you do as a game master, right? And I was thinking, but it'd be really cool if a group of players were getting into the whole the whole saga, the whole Tilikaal saga, and they get into this situation where they're like, the Federation hits a brick wall of okay, we just don't have the technological know-how to deal with this meta plot, some of the big stuff in the meta plot. We need the next evolution of technological assistance. The Kofuari are it. How do we approach them? How do we get them to be consultants if they're not willing to at least join us? How do we get that edge? And I was just starting to spin off on all kinds of ideas, and then I had to stop myself because the book was already too long.
I'm timing when this podcast is going to show, because I don't want my players to watch it because we're. You're right on target, Jim. That's all I'm going to say. This is the most exciting species in the book to me. And honestly, I could even see playing a game that doesn't involve Starfleet, doesn't involve Klingons, Romulans, and just have a story about this world and its development of getting off planet. And so if you're a new player, a new game master, a group, and you're like, what should we do? Just read about the Kofuari in this book and take off with it. I would love to see people who just do a pure Kofuari story.
Yeah, that'd be
cool. Really exciting to watch. Okay, and then finally we come to, I'll have to say, my second favorite, the Vinshari. Well, what was the concept behind them?
Yeah, so the Vinshari, this is Derek Tyler Attico's creation, and I didn't give him any prompting. I didn't say, make something dangerous. Just I gave them all complete creative freedom to come up with something. And then of course we tweaked it from there. But the original concept was this was the main power in the Shackleton Expanse, at least as far as we knew it. And they're aggressive, they're territorial, they're I don't want to say colonists, but they are aggressively expanding their territory, right? And they haven't reached out beyond the Expanse yet, but they are steadily working their way through the Expanse. And there's factions and there's other stuff going on. But I thought, any new setting needs a really cool, potential, powerful adversary. And we worked with Aaron to make sure that their starships had sufficient firepower that they could challenge most of the Federation starships or Klingon starships that would be making their way into the Expanse. And they're a species that the Federation could immediately start butting heads with, maybe become allies, or maybe come up with like a détente kind of a mutual non-aggression pact or something. But just wanted to really throw something different in there. And they have some biological quirks to them that I thought were really interesting that Derek dropped in there. And again, this is just a really cool species that I would love to see somebody do something with in their games. Whether, I can't even imagine what a player character Vinshari would look like on a Federation ship. I almost kind of envision like I don't know if you've read the DS9 novels, like the Gamma Quadrant novels, but at one point there was a Jem'Hadar who was assigned to the station by Odo, and he had to kind of just make it work, right? He didn't want to be there. He wanted to be kind of adversarial, but I could see a Vinshari being on a Federation ship being looked at sideways, even though they try to follow the IDIC tenets.
I won't be giving away too many spoilers to say that the reason why I think I'm excited about this character is because they're native to the Shackleton Expanse, and based on just not getting too deep into it, the Tilikaal, in my opinion, are not. And we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on in the Shackleton Expanse with the next chapter too. But there had to be a species that was upset by them coming into town, and therefore their politics and their belief system and their aggression has a reason behind it. And so I think, like you said, these could end up adversary to Federation or their greatest allies, since they've been in the Shackleton Expanse since the Tilikaal have been there. That's how we're kind of positioning it in our game. And I'm only saying this because we're getting into it this week, and so I'm not spoiling it for my players by declaring this. But I'm curious to see if they play their cards right and make allies out of the Vinshari or not.
Cool.
In our campaign. So these were the top 5 new character options. Talk to us, Jim, for people who are new to character options. What's the concept behind character options in Star Trek Adventures?
Well, if you're not familiar with the property, right? Of course, Star Trek is 56 years old now, and we've seen hundreds of different alien species on screen. And in the books and in comic books and everything else. And, we only have so many pages in the RPG books to devote to new character options. And so this was an opportunity to provide a few more. And I created 4 new ones because specifically this book was really meant to be more new stuff, more original new stuff, but plus the Orions, right? So just, more character options for your player characters to think about what kind of characters do they want to play, what kind of stories do you want to tell? Do you want to tell a Federation story or a Klingon story or a group of independents, right? This book came out before the player guide and the game master guide, but we were developing those 2 books while I was finishing up this one. And so in my head, I knew that's where we were going with the line, was to bring out those new player options in the player's guide. So if a group wanted to do something really creative and different, they could take the Shackleton book and the player's guide and do an independent campaign in the Shackleton Expanse. And how would that screw things up, right? Because what if you're advanced and you don't have the Federation resources to rely on, right? And you crash into the Vinshari. Now you're really screwed, right? Now what do you do? That just amps up the story potential and the drama for your campaigns. And I think at one point you said on the Facebook group, at one point your group had 70 threat saved up or 60 threat or some ridiculous number.
41.
41. Okay, right. So like, an independent crew going into the Expanse and crashing into Vinshari space, like that threat would ratchet straight up right off the roof, right? And you just have to deal with it. And I just can't wait to see what people again.
I encourage. I really would love the fans to write in and tell us how you're using these characters. If you're introducing them as main characters on your ship, what they look like, how they got. I love hearing all those options as this universe explodes open in the Shackleton Expanse. Another cool thing that is in this chapter, Aaron Paulier went to work again on new technology. And so I always love when we get more science and techno babble from him. What were your highlights from that section of chapter 4?
Aaron is fun because, like, if I give him a word count, he'll just go crazy with it. And sometimes I have to rein him back a little bit. But I just, for a lot of this technology, I was like, you know what, this sounds really cool, right? It sounds Star Trek. It sounds technical. It sounds like it all makes sense. I think my favorite piece in here was probably like the visual universal translator and the extreme pressure suit, right? The going into deep ocean, even more than what we can do now on Earth. But I was just like, oh man, these are great. Like, we don't see a lot of underwater stuff on Star Trek because they're usually busy exploring space. But like, exploring underwater is even every bit as dangerous because the pressures and all the stuff that's going on down there.
And that would count also. Recently, our group went to a Transjovian planet, basically like Jupiter, and that's high pressure environment too. So it takes more than a normal life support suit to survive in that environment, which was fun. My favorite was the megafauna and space-based life form sample equipment. Mm-hmm. We really get into science and technobabble in our game, and I actually look up real science and throw in a lot of those concepts. So I'll build that around tools like this, which we haven't had a chance to use yet, but I definitely have it marked to get in. So some really fun stuff for those of you who really want to get into the technobabble, expand your imagination, and explore the technology of the 24th, 25th, 26th, 32nd, 89th centuries. It's all in there.
Yep.
All right, fantastic. Great graphics too, showing the EV suit helmet and torso sub-assembly. Just fun to show players to make their imagination come alive. The reason I love graphics like this, for those of you who can't see it, it shows the transparent aluminum visor, the primary life support unit, status alert lights, and thermal micrometeoroid protection layer. The reason I love that is because this is where my complications come from. When I see a graphic like that, oh, well, you have a crack in your transparent aluminum visor. How are you going to fix that? So graphics, study those if you're getting the books, and find ways to throw some action and suspense into your game with it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And hat tip to Lee Woozy, who did the layout for the book. He came up with that graphic pretty much on his own. He knew, like, as we were laying it out, he knew that there were sections of the book that had some space, and we needed to put a graphic in there. And he came up with that. And when I looked at the draft that he sent me, I was like, oh, that's nice job, because he knows Trek pretty well. And I was really happy to see that. I mean, because you can see it in the graphics, right? You can see that he understands Trek and he knows Trek, and he had the assets and the resources available to put that together. And I was just really appreciative. So thank you, Lee, if you're listening to this. Thank you again for all that hard work you did on the layout.
Gorgeous. For anyone who has not peeked at these books again, get them to look at the art alone. It's wonderful. All right. Well, that's chapter 4. We're going to continue on to chapter 5 because we have the time, and okay. I'm excited to talk about the Tilikaal. Give us a brief blurb on the Tilikaal, Jim, before we launch into this chapter.
Yeah, I want to be careful because I don't want to give too much away, but the Tilikaal is really the alien species that Dayton Ward and Scott Pearson came up with way back in 2016 when they were starting to put the initial concept together with us for the Living campaign. And Dayton and Scott came up with this idea of, like, how about this really ancient alien species that had access to incredible technologies and then disappeared, left their technology behind, and they disappeared. What's up with that? And then there's strange stuff going on in the Shackleton Expanse that might be tied to all that. And what's all that mean? And so this chapter is an effort to kind of pull all together what the player characters probably know about Tilikaal heading into the next gen era of stories. Of course, the game master and the players are free, especially the game master is free to throttle this content as much or as little as they need to. Like, if the original series characters probably wouldn't have any right to know most of this stuff, so you just don't include it. But again, that entirely depends on what kind of game you want to run. Original series, you totally know this stuff. If that's what you want to do, go for it.
Well, let me
go ahead.
And with that said, let me give some advice for the GM who's kind of hesitant how to leap with this. Like you said, it gives a lot of details about the Tilikaal, but it does not explain the why. I'm going to tell you as a game master, you get the joy of making up why this technology is there. Who were the Tilikaal? Did they have a connection with any other Federation species or star or alien species or not? Where did they come from? This is all for you to make. I think if you start looking at the book and try to find those answers, you get lost. So I'm telling you right now, GMs, you get to invent the why. You get to decide why these species are important and their interrelation with each other. When I build games, I make it so that each species or each episode is one, maybe two, but generally one clue to solving the puzzle. And you may not know till 3 games later, oh, that's the relevance of this people, these characters, these species. So again, freedom of imagination, freedom of abandon on that, and just understand that you get the joy of making up why these characters are relevant, and now go play the game from that idea, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think game masters, throughout this book, I dropped in notes saying like, look, this is a toolkit. This is a toolkit. And I've probably hit that button too many times, but I really wanted to try to get GMs to understand that they are empowered to do whatever they want with this content. And it's not like you're not picking up a module off the shelf and like running your group through that module, knowing that every other single group in the universe is going to be running that exact same module exactly the same way, right? That's not what I wanted to do for this. I wanted to give everybody a whole bunch of tools, like Lego bricks, like throwing as many Lego bricks as possible into your bucket and then saying, just create something crazy and amazing and unique. And really careful about not dictating those answers, right? Like there's a lot of questions raised in this book about the Tilikaal, about the Expanse, about all these things going on, and they're all breadcrumbs, right? And it's up to each game master and group to connect the dots for their purposes, right? And I know that was it was intentional. Whether that was the right choice, I don't know. I'm going to leave it up to posterity now because it's not in my hands anymore. It's up to everybody else to figure it out.
I'm going to say yes for one other big reason, and I hope that makes this particular podcast go viral. I constantly see, sadly, I see a lot of negativity or a lot of criticism about Star Trek shows, the newer more than anything else, than I've ever seen before, and it's too bad. Maybe it's a reflection of how bad people are feeling in the universe, but I'm seeing a lot of negativity about that. I've always made my RPG that if I don't necessarily really like something in Star Trek canon, that my RPG is the place where I get to fix it, and I let my players fix it and say, well, what really happened? And so I've been using the Tilikaal saga to do just that. Ours centers around the destruction of the Hobus star in 2387, the Romulans, and the fact that Starfleet didn't go to make the save. And so our group has a lot of ethical issues with that. So we're fixing it, and we're kind of doing the James Kirk rogue. We're fixing it because we know certain things, and Tilikaal technology can help us with this. So it's, I've got their emotions involved, because if they don't like something happening in the Star Trek universe in particular, we get to have fun writing it ourselves. So that's my advice to GMs is dump the negativity. And if you think you could do a better job, here you go. Here's your chance.
Right. No, that's great. And then one other thing I want to note about this chapter before we go too much further on, and I know you're a big fan of the sidebars, right? On page 73, we have a short, well, it's a half-page sidebar in here, because one of the things I really liked about Dayton and Scott's initial draft way back in 2016 is, like, because they're both so steeped in Star Trek lore, they wanted to try to connect the Tilikaal saga to canonical events that we've already seen on screen. So like things like the temporal rift that the Enterprise D encountered in Next Generation, the Tychon's rift, the Typhon Expanse, the Nexus, the energy ribbon that we've seen in Generations. Like if you are a game master who knows Star Trek pretty well, and you watch an episode of the original series, and there's some strange, wacky event that happens that they refer to in the episode, or Spock makes a comment about it or something, and you really like that, you could probably fit it in here and chalk it off as a Tilikaal related thing. Like you can explain literally anything, any weird spatial anomaly that happens in the entire Star Trek timeline from the beginning of time to 32nd century and beyond. You could theoretically tie it all into the Telecoil saga and just blow this thing up into a multi-season, crazy, amazing campaign. But that sidebar should really help kind of direct your creative energies into like, oh yeah, every random thing that happens in a Star Trek episode. Like, I mean, heck, for where we are now, almost at the end of Discovery season 4, maybe species 10C is somehow related to the Tilikaal. Why not? Right?
I mean,
there's so much room here.
I literally was watching the show like, if they go there, that means someone in the writer's room is playing RPG and playing the Shackleton. I thought that. I always want to treat like people are watching this podcast or listening to this podcast for the very first time. And so Scott has said the name, Jim has said the name Dayton Ward and Scott Pearson. I just want people to let who they are, because I think that makes a big deal for an RPG. Dayton Ward is one of the top New York best-selling novelists for Star Trek. So he has his fingerprints on this book. Scott Pearson is the editor for Star Trek for Simon and Schuster. So these are, and Jim said that they're heavy into canon. Of course they are. They're some of the leaders in the industry for Star Trek. So think about that. They've helped design this game, the Shackleton Expanse Guide. So this is not lightweight, in my opinion. This is fun. You're playing with the big boys with this one, which I love it. I love seeing who wrote what, because then you kind of get an insight into the novels. Even for those of you who haven't read Coda, Star Trek Coda, I even felt some reminiscence to Coda with this, with that three-part novelization. So a lot of fun stuff, and you can just see the creativity pouring off the pages here, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So we wrap this chapter up talking a little bit about some of the worlds that have been related to the Tilikaal, and this is kind of a collection of worlds from some of the mission briefs and some of the adventures that you'll find in the book. Just try to collect them into one place just to make it easy for game masters to kind of reference. We drop in some page references so you can cross-reference as needed. Try to fill every one of these paragraphs of each world full of plot hooks, because why not? Maybe you just open this book and you cherry pick a couple of things here and there to drop into your campaign. Perfectly fine. It'll all fit. It'll all work. One way or another, it'll all work. I got some great art in here too. The art, I don't remember the specific artist off the top of my head, but I can go back and look for them. But some great art in here, just showing different spatial anomalies and just cool, amazing things out there in space. Almost like my directive for a couple of these pieces of art was like, imagine you're looking through the Hubble Space Telescope at some really cool, interesting region of space. What do you see? And there's worlds with gaseous nebulae and stars and stuff. And of course, Aaron was responsible for some of this because he wrote that great chapter early on in the book about spatial phenomena.
How does he do it? When I read these, the thing about the spatial phenomena, I'm going to give him a shout out again. Every time I read one, it forms a different picture picture in your mind as to what you're dealing with. And I cut and paste this for me, because we play on Discord. I cut and paste these descriptions directly into our narrative, and boom, it just takes off. The players take off with it. Yeah. So great work on that. Great planetary locations. And of course, I drop them into the map too, because I have a map. And so I kind of decide where these are as the players are discovering them, which adds to the realism of the game.
Nice. Cool. And then we do a chapter on the Tilikaal species themselves, a little bit about the Tilikaal, a little bit about the species that are connected to them in one way or another. And there's some little surprises in there for players. So I don't want to spoil anything right now, but there's a lot going on with the Tilikaal and a lot of levers that a game master could pull to really make things interesting for their players.
Yep, I just want to say my advice on that is don't get stuck on those definitions. Use them as a springboard, but they're not rules. I just have to say, because I've used some of it, I've dumped some of it, I've twisted and finessed some of it, and I do that one just in case my players have the books and they're reading them. I want to throw them off, but another one is so that I don't have to keep referring to the book. I create in my mind so that the rules are clear as the game master for myself.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Yep. And then we wrap it up with a short chapter on technology, artifacts, technology, weapons, all related to the Tilikaal. Just some really cool stuff in here. Again, this is Aaron, for the most part, going wild with some of the stuff. Although I think Scott wrote a chunk of this too. And I did a little tweaking, but for the most part, just kind of pulling from all the different mission briefs and adventures from the Living campaign and from the saga. just to try to give players and game masters a sense of like, here's some of what is possible with the Tilikaal, and then just encouraging them to go even bigger, right? Just be even more creative, make some amazing, cool stuff.
Well, I got to showcase a little bit of the art here as a spoiler. Yeah. I'll describe what it is for those who are just listening. But again, how my imagination goes wild is this art about isolinear processor fragments with radiometric dating. And I looked at that, I was like, okay, at some point I got to have my character stumble across that and give it some meaning. It's not mentioned at all in any of the definitions. So this is, again, just encouraging game masters and players to let their imagination go wild. Yep. A lot of cool art. A lot of cool stuff.
And this piece of art is another thing that Lee made. Initially, we had a different piece of art in this page, and it wasn't quite working. And I was like, I think we need something different here. And I said, why don't we look back at the core book, because the core book had a piece of art of a Tilikaal pillar that had like ancient writing on it. It might even be the cover of the starter set. It was a 2-page spread in the core book with they're looking at the pillar and they're looking at the technology and stuff. And I said, what if we took that and like did some sort of like Bajoran thing from DS9 where they get little pieces of artifacts and they don't really know how the pieces go together, but maybe they're scanning them or something. And it was like a two-sentence email to him. And then he came back with this, and I'm like, yeah, you got it. This is exactly right. Because the thing about this is what's so important in RPG books is like the art has to tell a story too, and the art has to provide you plot hooks too, right? It's not enough to just have a nice piece of art in the book. It's got to do something. And I think this is a great example of just like this little thing that he threw together. Like, I don't know how long it took him. It probably didn't take him more than a day. But like, there's a story here. It's like, okay, what do these little lines, what's this language mean? What do these message fragments mean? What's the radiometric dating? How does that relate to the characters? How does that relate to the story? If I'm a game master, I'm like, oh, this is a whole scene right here. This is like this could probably be a whole episode, right?
Hey, I'm telling you right now, I'm treating it like the Dead Sea Scrolls, and look it up and Google that if you don't know what it is. Yeah. But this literally in my current game is the key to solving a lot. And I was like, it's too good to just pass by. And so it's a clue that a character picked up, and it's going to have huge relevance in our game. So I only can say it again because it's not a spoiler, because my players are playing it this week. So
this will be out after the fact. Yeah.
Yes. I don't have to I'm not doing any damage with that. Again, we skim over this chapter because we don't want to do spoilers, but I'm hoping it's whetting people's appetites to what's in here. Maybe some people have the book and they haven't got to dig deep yet, or you haven't ordered the book yet. It's so much fun to be able to write your own Star Trek show. And so, really, really enjoy how, for me, I've never been more excited. I was just telling a friend the other day that in all my years for playing, maybe I said it here, I can't remember. Maybe you were the friend. All my years of playing a different RPG, Marvel Superheroes RPG, I never used one of the published novels ever in 28 years. Now I'm trying to get through all the Star Trek Adventures modules because they do all the work for me. And then they just spark my imagination, and my players love it, and I have the art to back it up. So it's really fun, really fun.
Yeah. And I would love to see, like, at some point, I don't know if it'll be a continuing mission or just some really some fan with a lot of time. I think we're at the point now where we have so many adventures and so many mission briefs available now. I mean, there's probably well over, probably 125 discrete episodes or stories out there. I think it would be really cool if somebody were to like mix and match and like pull Act 1 out of this episode and pull Act 2 out of this episode and pull the third plot hook from this mission brief into this and like just see how all these different pieces can be woven together into something really different. Because there's just so much content now.
You're killing me. What do you think I've been doing for 4 years? I mean, first of all, if anyone goes to continuing missions and goes to our adventure index, we list every adventure not only published by Odysseus, but whatever we could find on the net that people allowed us to publish. But not only that, I've written a mini novella for every single game we played, and awesome. I give credit, if you look in there, to where the module came from. So even though the names are different, I actually say, I call it story by, and that will be. But what's happening now is you'll now see that I have story by with maybe 2 or 3 names. That means I'm actually combining different modules together.
That's amazing.
Your dream is happening, Jim, right?
I am just elated. I mean, that is the dream, right? I mean, I didn't realize it getting into this job, right? But the fact that there are people out there taking this stuff and just doing amazing things with it, I mean, that's almost reward enough, just knowing that this stuff is being played and enjoyed. So,
I mean, I would ask anyone too. I'm curious. I would love to do a comparison to see in what order other people have played the games and where they ended up. Do we share some ideas? Do we come up with similar? I love that. So anybody who writes either Jim or myself, I'll post it on Continuing Mission, what you're doing. I love play reports and table of contents and stuff like that, because it just fascinates me to see how, just like in real life, you give someone a palette of paint, and you go to one of those wine tastings, one of those paint and wine nights, and everyone has the same subject, maybe a tiger, but everyone comes up with their own interpretation. And they're so beautiful when you put them all together. Like I actually did that with some friends, and there were 9 of us. And some people felt theirs wasn't good. Others people's were better. But when we put all 9 of them into a square, it was one of the most beautiful art pieces I ever saw. And I feel it's the same way with Star Trek Adventures. Every idea is good. You get, hear a lot of it, and the more we compare it, more it gets me into wanting to play more. So it's really cool.
Very cool. Very cool. All right, man.
So let's do our normal thing and give shout outs, right? So
yeah, for sure.
Let's go ahead and give a shout out. Jim Cushman tells us about his favorite brick and mortar, which is Night Watch Games in San Antonio, Texas. All right. So we want to make sure that Night Watch Games feels our love for you continuing having a brick and mortar that supports gaming and tabletop gaming. And Jim Cushman appreciates it, and we all appreciate it. Who do you want to appreciate, Jim?
It doesn't get said often enough. I want to appreciate the fans. Like every day when I'm working away on these books or products or whatever, and if I'm feeling down or if I'm feeling tired, all I have to do is go to Twitter or Facebook or our new, just shameless plug for the new Modiphius Discord channel, and just to see the enthusiasm out there for people playing the game and doing random stuff. Even the folks that are really going very tangential to the traditional Star Trek storyline, I think it's cool just to see what they're doing with it. So, I don't say it often enough that I really appreciate the fans, but they buoy me when I need to be buoyed. And sometimes I don't realize it, but they keep me going. So, just know that, the entire Star Trek Adventures team, of which is mostly me and all of my freelancers, including you, we are doing this with so much love for Star Trek, and we see it being appreciated. And I can't thank you enough for that. So thank you all. And thank you for the opportunity to chat with them too, because this is an awesome podcast and I'm having a lot of fun with it.
Good. Yeah, we're hearing good things. And, people always feel free to give us suggestions about what you'd like to hear more of, less of, whatever. It keeps going as long as we have content and ideas. I know it's amazing. Star Trek Adventures has been out over 4 years now, and it's stronger than ever. I know Continuing Missions was kind of like an accident. A few of ourselves, myself, Tony Pye, I always call him Mephit James. I know his real name. I don't know if he wants his real name out there, but I'll call him Mephit James. A couple others were like, hey, let's start doing this. And it just blew up. And so likewise, that's because of the fans constantly telling us what they want and us doing as much as we can to please them. So I'm all about the fan service here.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, IDIC, let me pet my Kofuari. Pet him.
Live long and prosper.
Take care.
We'll talk to you next time.